"That one's worth more than your life," the man sneered, his voice dripping with mockery, loud enough to draw a few curious glances. His friends chuckled, half hidden behind their champagne glasses. Malik didn't react. He stood there, calm and steady near the velvet rope, hands tucked in his pockets, quietly admiring the gleaming silver-gray surface of the Rolls-Royce. He hadn't touched the car. He hadn't even crossed the line. But in that moment, surrounded by tailored suits, shiny watches, and inflated egos, his quiet presence alone seemed to offend someone who couldn't stand it. Ever seen someone get looked down on? Not for what they did, but just for staying calm while being disrespected? Tell us in the comments. And don't forget, drop where you're watching from. Let's rewind. Malik Barnes hadn't come here for a spectacle. He came to Sterling Auto for something simple: dependability. No luxury, no flash, just a solid used ride to replace his old Civic that had finally broken down last week. Alone, in a gray hoodie, clean jeans, and a manila folder under his arm, he walked through the dealership's glass doors. He'd done his homework: a 2013 Corolla, affordable, pre-approved financing. All that was left was the paperwork and keys. But then, something made him pause. On the far end of the polished showroom floor, behind red velvet ropes and glowing signs, sat a lineup that looked more like art than cars. A fiery orange Lamborghini Urus, a jet-black Rolls-Royce Ghost, and in the center, like a diamond in spotlight, a silver Bugatti Chiron. Its engine purred low as technicians polished it for display. Above it, a banner read, "Sterling Elite Ultra Luxury Line, One-Day Showcase." Malik stopped. Not long, just long enough to appreciate the beauty, the engineering, the precision. No photos, no questions, just a quiet moment of admiration. And that's when the atmosphere shifted. The glass doors opened and a man walked in who looked like he'd been born into wealth. Blue-tailored blazer, gold cufflinks, slicked hair, loafers untouched by dirt. His name didn't need to be said, it was written all over him. Preston. He moved with the kind of confidence that assumed ownership. Two friends trailed behind him, smug and tipsy, champagne flutes in hand. They were there for the invite-only launch party. Then Preston spotted Malik. His grin faltered just slightly. Malik didn't fit the scene. No Rolex, no sales rep fawning over him, no drink in hand, just a man in a hoodie watching quietly. "Keep dreaming, brother," Preston called out, stepping closer so everyone nearby could hear. "They don't do layaway on Bugattis." Malik turned his head, offered a calm smile. "Maybe not today," he said evenly. "But one day." Then he simply walked away, no retort, no anger. Just quiet confidence as he returned to the front desk, where the salesman Kevin was waiting with his financing papers. But that quiet composure, that unshakable calm, that's what burned Preston the most. He stood frozen for a second, the smirk slipping off his face. His friends didn't laugh this time. Malik hadn't given him the show he wanted. And for people like Preston, who feed on reactions, silence is the one thing they can't stand. Some folks can't handle not being feared. What about you? In that moment, would you have walked away or said something? Tell us in the comments. Preston's eyes followed Malik like he was trying to solve a riddle he couldn't quite figure out. And then something dark flickered behind his grin. He didn't want Malik gone because he'd done something wrong. He wanted him gone because he hadn't bowed his head. He leaned toward a nearby employee, gesturing casually toward Malik. "You might want to keep an eye on that one," he muttered. "Been circling those cars a little too long?" The employee hesitated, uneasy, but nodded anyway. Preston leaned back, his grin returning, thin, cold, and calculated. He stayed near the rope, watching Malik like a man eyeing a threat he'd invented in his own head. Malik, meanwhile, stayed focused. He sat beside Kevin, the young salesman, calmly reviewing his paperwork. No whispering. No side glances toward the luxury section. Just signing pages, answering questions, and doing what he came to do. But for Preston, that still wasn't enough. He couldn't stand that Malik was unbothered. He took another sip of champagne, then flagged down a passing employee. "Seriously?" he said, voice dripping with entitlement. "You're just letting anybody stroll through now? I thought this was a luxury launch, not a bus stop." The young worker froze, forcing a tight, polite smile but staying quiet. That only fueled Preston's smugness. He lifted his hand and waved toward the front desk. "Can we get the manager out here, please?" He called out, loud enough for the entire showroom to hear. The receptionist blinked, startled, but quickly picked up the phone. Malik heard it. So did Kevin, but Malik didn't even look up. He kept signing, steady hands, calm face. Ever been in a room where people didn't like you, not for who you are, but for how calm you stayed when they tried to make you snap? Let me know in the comments. And don't forget, tell us where you're watching from. Moments later, the manager appeared, walking briskly across the floor. His name tag read Daniel, general manager. Perfect hair, crisp white shirt, silver cufflinks, one of those smiles that showed teeth but never warmth. "Glad you're here," Preston said before Daniel could speak, raising his glass toward Malik. "That guy's been hanging around the display cars. Gave me and my buddies a weird vibe. I don't know what his deal is, but it's making people uncomfortable." Daniel followed Preston's gesture. No questions, no hesitation. He gave a quick nod and strode toward the front desk, where Malik and Kevin sat. Kevin straightened immediately, forcing a bright tone. "Hey, Daniel," he said. "We're just finishing up the financing on a Corolla. Mind if I have a quick word with your customer?" Daniel asked, his eyes locked on Malik. Malik turned slowly, steady as ever, and met his stare. "Is there a problem?" Daniel's smile was polite, but his tone wasn't. "Not necessarily. I just wanted to remind all our guests that today's luxury showcase is for high-tier clients only. We're asking everyone to stay within their designated browsing areas." Kevin shifted uncomfortably. "He's not browsing, though. He's buying a used car." But Daniel kept going, pretending not to hear. "There was a report that you were lingering around the VIP display section. We just want to make sure everyone here feels safe and respected." Malik's eyebrow lifted. "Safe?" He glanced over toward Preston, who was now pretending not to eavesdrop, though his body was angled directly toward them. "I didn't cross any lines," Malik said evenly. "I looked at a few cars, then came here to finish my paperwork." "And I'm sure that's true," Daniel replied quickly, the fake smile still in place. "But we just need to be proactive, you understand?" Malik held his gaze for a long second before nodding once. "I understand exactly what this is," he said quietly. No shouting, no arguing, just composure. Then he turned back to Kevin. "Can we keep going?" Kevin nodded, his hands trembling slightly as he flipped through the pages. Daniel hesitated, then finally walked off. But the tension stayed behind like static in the air. Across the room, Preston was smiling again. He'd gotten what he wanted: attention, suspicion, control. But even as he smirked into his glass, something about Malik's stillness unsettled him. Because even after being treated like a threat in front of everyone, Malik hadn't cracked. What would you do if someone reported you just for existing in a space they didn't think you belonged in? Would you fight it? Or stay calm and let the truth expose itself? Preston was starting to fume. He'd mocked Malik, whispered lies, dragged management into it, and still, Malik sat there steady and composed. That calm was the one thing Preston couldn't conquer. Meanwhile, the luxury event roared on. Champagne glasses clinked, cameras flashed, laughter echoed under the vaulted ceilings. Executives paraded the Lamborghinis and Bugattis like trophies. Malik sat quietly at a side desk across from Kevin, double-checking his loan paperwork. His ID rested beside the stack of forms, waiting for the printer to finish. But the energy in the room had shifted. People were noticing. The interns, the receptionists, the porters. They'd seen Preston pacing, glaring, whispering, all while Malik sat silently, refusing to break. Kevin leaned in, voice low. "Hey, you okay?" Malik nodded once. "They don't want me here," he said softly. "But I'm not going anywhere. Have you ever felt that? That moment when the whole room changes, not because of what you did, but because of what someone else decided you were? Tell me in the comments, what would you have done? And don't forget to let us know where you're watching from." But Preston wasn't finished, not even close. He strolled back toward the velvet rope, calmly setting his glass down on the bar. Then, when he knew eyes were on him, he made his move. His voice carried across the polished showroom. "Hey, who's in charge of security?" he called out. "Because I just saw that guy touch the rolls." Every head turned. Daniel, the manager, stepped out of his office instantly, his smile already tight. "What happened?" "That guy," Preston said, jabbing his finger toward Malik. "I saw him leaning over the rope. His hands were all over the hood. I'm telling you, he's casing the place, probably trying to lift fingerprints." The room froze. Kevin shot up halfway from his seat. "That's not true," he said quickly. "He hasn't even moved. He's been sitting here with me the whole time." But Daniel hesitated. Because Preston wasn't just anyone. He was loud, dressed like money, and used to being believed. Daniel turned toward Malik. "Is that true?" Malik didn't flinch. He didn't raise his voice or plead his case. "Yes," he said simply. "I've been sitting here the whole time." "Check your cameras," Preston scoffed. Or maybe the cameras just missed it. People like that know how to move when no one's watching. Silence. Thick. Uncomfortable. A woman by the coffee bar whispered, "Did he really just say that?" Kevin looked ready to sink into the floor. Daniel's jaw tightened. "We're going to pause this sale," he said. "I'll have someone review the footage." Malik exhaled slowly. "You can pause it if you want," he said evenly. "But I'm not going to defend myself against a lie, just because someone rich shouted it loud enough." Preston crossed his arms, smirking. "Funny how that works, huh? You show up in a hoodie, hanging around million-dollar cars, and expect no one to wonder." Malik turned to face him fully now. "I didn't ask you anything," he said quietly. "Didn't speak to you. Didn't touch your car." "Gentlemen," Daniel interjected, hands raised. "Let's not escalate this. We'll verify everything shortly," but it was already too late. The damage was done, people were staring. One man pulled out his phone. A woman gently steered her child toward the exit. The laughter that had filled the showroom minutes earlier was gone. Kevin glanced at Malik nervously. "They'll check the footage," he said. "That'll clear this up." Malik nodded once, calm, still, but Preston wasn't satisfied. He leaned over the reception desk, voice sharp and commanding. "Call security!" The words hit the air like glass shattering. What would you do right now? Defend yourself, or let the lie collapse under its own weight, because in that moment the entire room was watching. "That's him right there." Preston barked as the front doors opened. "He's the one I told you about, messing with the rolls, acting shady. You better check him before he disappears." Two uniformed officers stepped inside, their hands hovering near their belts. The laughter, the chatter, the clinking glasses, all of it stopped. The showroom went still. Every sound died at once. No chatter, no footsteps, not even the hum of conversation. Malik rose slowly from his chair. No panic, no sudden movements, just quiet composure as he clasped his hands behind his back and met the officer's eyes. The taller officer stepped forward. "Sir, we got a report of suspicious activity." "We're going to need you to step outside." Kevin shot up instantly, his voice cracking with urgency. No, he's with me." "He hasn't done anything. I've been helping him with financing this whole time." But Preston wasn't finished. He moved between the officers, his voice rising with performative outrage. "I saw him touching the Rolls-Royce." "He's been circling that thing all day like he's planning something. If you wait any longer, it might be too late." Daniel, the manager, stood off to the side, pale and silent, pretending not to exist. The officers exchanged a look, then stepped closer. "Sir," the taller one said again, "we're not going to argue here. Outside, now." Malik blinked slowly. He took a single deep breath, turned slightly. And that's when it happened. A calm, firm voice rang out from across the room. "Hey, back off him." Heads turned. Conversations froze mid-sentence. From the luxury section, a man began walking toward them. No security badge, no uniform. Just a man in a blazer with no tie, tan slacks, clipboard in hand, composed, deliberate. Every employee in the building seemed to stiffen when they saw him. Daniel's face went white. He recognized him and didn't know what to do. The man approached, stopping beside the officers. He glanced at Malik, then at Preston, and finally at the cops. His tone was measured, almost casual. "You're about to detain the wrong man," the taller officer frowned. "And you are?" The man didn't answer right away. He reached into his blazer and pulled out a sleek black leather folder. Opening it, he handed over a document. The officer took it, scanned the page, and his entire posture changed. His shoulders dropped. His eyes darted between the paper and Malik. Then the man spoke again, calm but with a weight that silenced the room. "This man," he said, gesturing toward Malik, "Mr. Malik Barnes, is the majority shareholder of this entire dealership group. He's not here to buy. He's here to observe." The air left the room. Preston gave a shaky, nervous laugh. "Wait, what?" Kevin froze, the pen slipping from his fingers and clattering onto the desk. Daniel's face turned crimson. His jaw twitched, eyes flicking from Malik to the floor. Malik said nothing. He just looked at Preston, steady, silent, unwavering. "You came at me loud," he said finally, his voice low but clear. "Threw out lies. Called the cops on me. All because I looked at a car you didn't think I should look at," Preston stammered. I didn't know," Malik cut him off gently. "You didn't know. But you acted like you did." The officer, who had nearly cuffed Malik, lowered his gaze. The man with the clipboard turned toward Daniel, his expression unreadable. "You and I will be having a conversation, privately." Then he faced Malik again. "Sir, do you want us to have this man escorted out?" Malik's eyes stayed on Preston for a moment, taking him in. The red face, the sweat, the fading arrogance. "No need," Malik said quietly. "He just escorted himself out. Have you ever watched someone throw their power around only to realize too late they picked the wrong target? What would you have done if you were Malik?" Preston stood frozen, face burning under all that expensive fabric. The silence around him felt heavier than the weight of any crowd. He glanced at Malik, then the doors, then finally dropped his gaze to the floor. Because in that moment, it hit him. He hadn't just lost control of the room. He never had it. Malik didn't flinch, didn't gloat. He just held Preston's stare, the same man who'd tried to have him thrown out moments ago. "You wanted me to feel small," he said quietly, "to second-guess myself, to shrink when you raised your voice. But I've been shrinking for people like you my whole life. Not anymore." Preston opened his mouth, but no sound came out. His confidence had finally cracked. Then the executive stepped forward, calm and precise. "Escort him out," he said to security. "Flag his ID. He's permanently banned from every Sterling Auto House location nationwide." Everyone watched as Preston was led away, past the same velvet ropes he once guarded like a throne. Now they marked the boundary of a kingdom that no longer recognized him. Someone in the back whispered, "That's what privilege looks like when it breaks." Have you ever seen a man trip over his own ego and fall face first into the truth? Malik didn't need to say another word to Preston. The silence said everything. Then his gaze turned to Daniel, the manager. The man's face was drained of color, eyes darting like he wanted to melt into the marble floor. Malik spoke quietly, but the words hit like a hammer. "You know what makes you worse than him, Daniel?" Daniel swallowed hard. "He lied to feel powerful," Malik continued. "But you knew it was wrong. And you went along with it anyway." The room stayed still. "All you had to do was ask a question," Malik said. "You didn't. All you had to do was stand up." "You didn't." Daniel's lips trembled, but he said nothing. Behind him, the executive's voice was cold and final. "Daniel, your suspension is effective immediately. Termination paperwork will be reviewed within 24 hours. Leave your badge at the desk." Daniel didn't protest. He just removed the pin from his shirt, placed it on the counter, and walked out. No excuses. No defense. Just silence and regret. Malik turned toward Kevin, who still looked frozen in disbelief. "You tried," Malik said softly. "That matters." Kevin shook his head. "I didn't do enough." Malik nodded. "Then next time do more. Not just for someone like me, for anyone who's standing alone." Kevin swallowed hard and nodded again. The executive stepped closer. "If you're ready, sir, we can finalize the documentation upstairs." Malik took a moment, eyes scanning the gleaming cars, the glass, the faces that had witnessed everything. "I came here to buy a car," he said at last. But I'm leaving with something else, the truth. This place didn't need a new fleet. It needed a reckoning. The next morning, the headline didn't read record luxury sale. It read, Black investor profiled at dealership reveals he secretly owns the brand. The video went viral. It wasn't loud. It wasn't angry. It was quiet. A man falsely accused, standing his ground and saying, "You think I don't belong here? I own the floor you're standing on." And in that moment, the world turned upside down. Don't forget to subscribe to Story FBI for more real stories like this, where silence speaks louder than shouting and the lesson always finds its mark.